Now, how do we as Africans think that by switching off the light of knowledge and information, continuous eating of these rotten
Because you're gonna
apples
taste the
will
words.
make
It
them
won't help
healthy?
you.
So in my own thing, guys, we may as well just switch on the lights while we're eating. When we notice what is rotten, that's my message for Africa. Keep the lights on while you are eating what you don't understand.
Why is Africa the way it is?
Beautiful question, and what a better place to start from. The starting point is, let's look at the continent of Africa. It has received so many labels.
Of course.
The sleeping giant of the world, the dark continent. You know, you've heard those terms.
Yes.
You know, and we have a lot of negative information about Africa.
Yeah.
But I want to begin from a positive. You know, if you're looking at Africa, particularly issues to do with the continent itself, and not what everyone else thinks about. Africa, without any doubt, is materially the richest continent.
Is it?
This is a continent that has predictable weather, predictable climate. We know when it is winter.
Yeah.
We know when it is summer. We know when it is rain season, you know. Even with climate change, Africa is relatively still okay. Okay? And then look at what God has put in Africa. For those of us who are of Christian persuasion, we believe in the Creator, you know. When you look at Africa, it is a continent that has the best forestry. Any type of timber you may need for anything is in the continent of Africa.
Oh, even the famous Mukula.
Think about the soils of Africa. The best for any food.
Yeah.
Think about the bowels of Africa. They carry every precious stone, every mineral, anything that you need for any technological advancement is in Africa. You look at the animals of Africa, wildlife. We have literally every animal. We can run tourism for anything in Africa. Look at our waterfalls. Look at the peace of Africa. And also look at the continents that surround Africa. They do not have what we have. This is a question that has bothered people for generations. Why is Africa the richest continent in the world and yet the home of the poorest? And that question has received numerous answers, ranging from social, theological, religion, political, different answers. Some have argued that Africa is the way it is because it is very hot, and so Africans' brains are ever undergoing excessive temperatures, you know, and so it's like an African is carrying an omelette, you know, in the head and cannot think. Okay? Africans cannot think. There's that theory.
Okay.
Others have argued and said, no, Africans are the ones that belong to the generation of Noah's son who was cursed. So this is a continent of people that are cursed to be servants of everyone. You know, others have argued and said, no, Africa is the way it is because of its education system. The education system of Africa does not promote thinking. It promotes remembering.
Okay.
The question we should be asking is, have we always been like that?
Okay.
Who came here to teach us how to remember and not how to think? Others have said, no. With Africa, look at the shapes of all continents. They are all different from Africa. It is only Africa that has the shape of a question mark. You know, it's the only continent that asks the question, why are we what we are? Because given everything we have, Africa is a leader in all negative statistics, malnutrition levels. With our high morals, we still lead in HIV.
Wow.
With our high morals. No homosexuality, no what, with a lot of decency, we are still leaders in HIV. If you look at corruption, it is more pronounced. There is no continent where we have had presidents, former presidents taken to court for corruption more than Africa. If you look at malnutrition, no continent in the world has as many malnourished children as Africa. So when you ask the question, why Africa? Awakening Africa is a program that attempts to answer that critical question. And so for today, let's begin with Africa's major problem. Africa's major problem is loss of self-esteem. Africans are very low on confidence. You see, the first thing you need to understand is that anything is as powerful as it is made.
Of course.
Of course.
And you cannot make use of anything unless you know its use.
Of course.
Now, Africans have been damaged.
Mm.
Okay? From the very beginning, we all understand that man's greatest question has been, where do we come from?
Yeah.
Who are we?
Of course.
What are we doing on earth? Okay? And so from the very beginning, Africans had this creator mentality. And that is why you find in Zimbabwe, Mwari, Wakudenga, in Zambia, Murungu, Lesa, Kabumba, Shakapanga. So Africans believed there was a supernatural being called God who created us. Okay? Now, the power of anything lies in its making. Where did this self-confidence disappear to? How did we lose it? Okay? And we cannot run away from the facts. The Europeans and their colleagues are not as blessed in terms of resources as Africa is.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But for some reason, maybe because of their hardships, they became more inquisitive at an earlier stage than Africans.
Is it?
So you know that the mother of invention is challenges.
Okay.
So Africans didn't have too many challenges.
Okay.
If you wanted fruits, they were there in the neighborhood, just behind your house. There was a tree. You know, if you wanted meat, the animals were roaming all over. If you wanted fish, you had it in the river. Whatever you wanted, you had in Africa. So because of all this availability, Africans did not develop a searching mind quick enough.
Okay.
Go to Europe, there are places where they see the sun once in 6 months. Their rivers are part of the year frozen. Okay? Life is tough. Now, because life is tough, they developed an inquisitive mind much faster
Wow.
than Africans. Although Africans were developing at their own pace.
Wow.
In fact, it is clearly stated that civilization began in Africa.
Of course, yes.
But how were we overtaken?
Yeah.
So with that inquisitive mind, you have read in history that there was something called Industrial Revolution of Europe. A revolution is a riot against something.
Of course.
So they sat down and said, what do we need to lead a decent life? And so at that time, an explorer mentality was developed. They needed to search the world for answers. You know, migration is born out of dissatisfaction with where you are.
Of course.
Okay?
Of course.
Africans were not migrants because we have everything.
Because, yeah, they were...
Our colleagues didn't have. So they developed a migration mentality.
Okay.
Okay? And they were called explorers. You know,
Yeah.
you use nice words. They were called explorers. Vasco da Gama, Mungo Park, you know, some came as missionaries.
David, yeah.
David Livingstone.
Yeah.
Now, when they came to Africa, here is what shocked them. They found a continent where everything you looked at was a symbol of wealth.
Wow.
Beautiful trees, beautiful falls, the Monomotapa Hills, you know.
Yeah.
Everything they saw was wealth. And so when they went back, they gave reports. We are coming from a continent, to use biblical language, that flows with milk and honey. We are coming from a continent where everything is available. And the indigenous people of that continent are contented because they have the skill that produces whatever they need. They trade using a barter system. They exchange real things with real things.
Yeah.
They have a religion. They worship. The people we found in this continent, there's no poverty. It is reported. There is no poverty. But they are underutilizing what they have. And that remains Africa's problem. They are underutilizing what they have. So the inquisitive minds of the people who didn't have what we have sat down. What do we do to take advantage of what they have?
Okay.
What do we do? And two quick options were discovered. The first one was that Africans had no idea about Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Okay, so the savior issue was missing in Africa. And secondly, Africans had a school system which they called informal, which didn't have classrooms
Okay.
and teachers who went to some university. It had a school system which taught people what they needed. So two things were agreed. First of all, let us Christianize Africa. Let us make them Christians. Nothing wrong, doctor, don't get me wrong, nothing wrong. But what will be the content of the gospel?
That's where they touched.
That is where the issue comes in.
Okay.
What will be the content of the gospel? You know, for those that have studied history, you will discover that when they were discussing the scramble for Africa, one of the statements they made was that we need to send missionaries first. And the purpose of the missionary is to humble the African. So take a message to an African with emphasis on whoever slaps you on the right cheek,
Give him a...
give him the left.
So should we say that was a misinterpretation?
You see, any half-truth is not different from a lie. Okay.
I see.
You can tell me 90% of truth.
Okay.
The moment 10%
Is
doesn't have truth, you dilute, you pollute everything you've given me.
So how did they move from...
So they came,
Yeah.
and the emphasis was on the kingdom to come.
Okay.
The kingdom to come. Nothing wrong. But in that message of the kingdom to come, there was a deliberate ploy to make Africans ignore the wealth of Africa. So the missionary, in his coming, diverted the African's mind to the kingdom to come and made him irrelevant on the things that he has on earth. So this is why you have beautiful songs like, "This world is not my home.
I'm just passing through.
I'm just passing." No. Someone in transit has nothing to do with what he finds in transit.
Wow.
Okay. So this world is not my home. I'm just passing through.
Wow.
And there was also an emphasis in the gospel, unfortunately, which was anti-wealth.
Okay.
You know, there was something like, the poorer you are, the holier you are, you know. So an African became this human being who was looking forward to a kingdom to come and became contented with misery, because misery was like persecution which prepares you for the next life.
Wow.
So we had missionaries of every color and of every shade occupying Africa. You know, if you look at Zimbabwe, look at Zambia, look at Malawi, every corner had some missionary, you know. And the interesting part is, here are people carrying the same gospel about the same Savior, but coming as different churches.
Yeah.
So everyone is coming, they're talking about the same Jesus, and they're criticizing each other.
Wow.
You know, they're criticizing each other. Clearly, there was an agenda
There's already confusion as
that
they come.
we are yet to find out. And even religion itself drove a knife in the things that held Africa together.
Wow.
Because now you're at a home where the woman is Catholic, the husband is SDA,
Yeah.
the daughter is apostolic.
Yeah.
You know, and already in that state, you don't expect development.
Of course.
Because you have confusion which is religious based.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted us to look at the next thing that caused Africa's dilemma. So, religion path succeeded. The next path, remember, we are saying the African education system was about skills. You had to be a blacksmith.
Of course.
You had to be a fisherman.
Of course.
You had to be a farmer.
Of course.
You had to be someone who does. In fact, you were known for what you do.
Of course. Of course.
Then they brought a school system, because what was to follow was that Europe needed to develop industries in Africa where raw materials were readily available.
Of course.
Now, who would provide labor? Who would be the worker?
Yeah.
So they needed a group of people who would be made to feel upgraded if they spoke the visitor's language. They needed a group of people who would feel upgraded if they abandoned their skill and got a job.
Wow.
So they came to us and said, you need school. It's called formal school. And so in that formal school, what was the focus? Reading, writing, arithmetic. And in this reading, writing, and arithmetic, what was the focus? Remember what you have been taught. So in other words, you were taught things that you could not use, But you were taught things that someone else would